to you about an article I read in 2009. How crazy is it that I remembered what year I read it? But it did stay with me because it was called Getting Brand Communities Right. It was in Harvard Business Review. And it was about this topic that everyone was talking about. And unfortunately, I was feeling like people were not really saying interesting stuff about this topic. And here there was an article that was creating added value on top of this topic that needed it so much. So it was about communities, and back in those days, we were all talking about brand communities and what they are. And actually, back then, it was just people who were followers of a Facebook page, of a social media account, and there was not much community to the community. And in this article, the experts were discussing brand, that's Harley Davidson, and they were explaining how there was a real community because the people who worked there loved motorbikes and the consumers did. They came together, they went on rides, and then while they were riding through the nature, they would stop and clean the environment and do things. And so they were analyzing this brand that had at the core of its existence something that had a purpose, that had a passion, that was shared, and people were genuinely enjoying spending time together and bonding. So that was hitting a point for me because when you talk about the word community, it means that people know each other, that they spend time together, that they support each other, that by spending that time together, they are enriching their existence, their lives. And I am one, as a strategist, to love frameworks. And here there was a framework where they were telling us, decrypting, decoding these different types of communities and what puts them together, why people choose to spend time together. And so there was one type of community where people would come together because they were all the followers of the same inspirational person. Like, for example, people who loved Apple because of Steve Jobs, or people who were following a political leader. And other types of communities were coming together because they had a shared passion, like gamers. They were connecting and sharing tips on how to be better at World of Warcraft. And another third type was the people who came together out of need because, for example, they were all cancer survivors, and coming together was allowing them to share information, fight together for their rights, support each other. And so this was giving me a way of questioning and evaluating communities and seeing, okay, if this is the reason to be, do they have the right types of tools to communicate, to empower each other, and so on. And in the same article, they were talking about 18 roles that someone can play in a community. You could be the hero of the community and create historical moments of challenges that are being surpassed and inspire the people. You could be the historian who welcomes people, the newcomers, and tells them all the history of how this community came to grow. And so in today's world, we're talking about brands and their identities. And I believe that if we want the economic system to change for the better, if we want brands and companies to be responsible for their impact, then I think the notion of community needs to be at the core, at the heart of all of these questions. Because if you are creating value that is needed in the world, then people will gather around that solution, around that value being created, and they will want to keep sharing with you ways of improving it, and they will support you. But if you're just creating something to fight in the battle of competition and make sure that that cake slice of economy and money comes rather to you than to someone else, then are you really creating value? And should there really be people genuinely gathering around you? So I have been thinking about these things, and through time I started studying communities and the levers of empowering them and how that can be done. And every time I realized that the purpose, the reason to be, the organic reason to be and evolve of the company, the community, the organization is always at the core, because that is what your communication tools are going to be there to support. I always like to take the example of Patagonia because, like, everyone does. Really, it's the easiest go-to. But it's so easy when you look at Yvan Chouinard, the founder's story. it was a guy who loved doing sports. There weren't safe equipments to do what he wanted to do, so he designed the tools, and then his buddies were like, oh, we need that equipment too. And then he became a business because he had to produce these things and provide for them. And then if you want to protect nature and the world, then in the process of producing stuff, then you become a learner of how can I make things that are long lasting? How can I make things that are good for people's health, that the people working on the production sites are not hurt by the chemicals and stuff? And so this for me is what I like to call abundance design, because from what you design, you're answering to a need that was there. If you're the one doing this, it would be best if you're doing it because you were the one needing it originally. You made it, you put it out there, and now it's accessible to others. And if one day no one needs that anymore, then we should embrace the mortality of those concepts, the mortality of those companies, because otherwise, we're nothing better than an artificial intelligence. We're just something trying to solve the equation of how do I keep making money. So these are big topics, and I don't want to be cause washing here because we all have our own thoughts and opinions on how to do a better world, and we all still need to survive and keep living in this existing system. But if we want to thrive together, I think we need to keep having conversations about these things and see how we can keep loving our jobs, because I do coaching on the one hand and I do brand strategy on the other, and it is such a fun job to do. But of course, in the current world we're living in, we all want to improve the impacts of our jobs on society. I will be having these types of conversations in the interviews I'm having, and you will see we all have the same wishes in our hearts. And if we come together, we can do it.